Imagine a teacher who leaves his comfort zone to face the toughest challenge, changing the lives of troubled students in Harlem. The Ron Clark story, 2006, starring Matthew Perry, is a true story full of inspiration, courage, dedication, and creative teaching methods that turn dreams into reality. With his unique approach and a big heart, Ron Clark proves that believing in someone can change everything. Are you ready to see how an ordinary teacher becomes an extraordinary hero? Don't miss this emotional and motivational story. Discover the meaning of struggle and the magic of education today. Enjoy the movie, and don't forget to subscribe to Orion Storyline to stay updated on more inspiring films. The film begins with a man named Ron Clark, who has just started working as a teacher at an elementary school. While waiting for instructions, Ron notices a young boy standing inside a trash can, facing the wall, a very peculiar sight. Curious, Ron approaches him to find out what's going on. The boy says his teacher told him he couldn't learn and made him stand in the trash can. Ron introduces himself to the boy, named Headley, and then pretends to forget his name, asking him to repeat it. Headley responds, "Your name is Ron Clark." Ron smiles and says, "Wow, see? You can learn something." Ron then helps Headley out of the trash can, and the boy hopes Ron will become his teacher. 4 years later, during a Thanksgiving event at the school, the principal congratulates Ron because his class has been the best for 4 consecutive years. As a reward, the principal gives him a personal parking spot with his name on it. A nice gesture. However, Ron has a bigger dream: to teach in New York. Believing in his teaching ability, he decides to take a risk and leave Carolina to pursue his dream. Early one morning, Ron bids farewell to his parents and heads to New York, a bustling city filled with busy, indifferent, and unfriendly people. Ron checks into a hotel to rest. The next morning, he asks Yolanda, the receptionist, for a list of schools in an area called Harlem. Yolanda warns him, saying, "You want to teach in Harlem? You'll need a lawyer just in case you get beaten up there because you're white." Undeterred, Ron applies to several schools. Despite having an impressive resume, he struggles to get hired. As his finances dwindle, Ron takes a job as a waiter in a restaurant, where he meets a woman named Marissa. In his free time, he continues searching for teaching positions. One day, he arrives at a school in Harlem, where he witnesses a student arguing with a teacher. Ron intervenes to break up the fight, and the principal steps in, sending the student, Tyson, to her office. Frustrated, the teacher quits on the spot. Seeing an opportunity, Ron speaks with the principal, briefly explaining his qualifications. The principal gives Ron a quick tour of the school and introduces him to some of the top-performing students. However, one class catches Ron's attention. A class filled with what the principal calls little thugs. She explains that 6 teachers have already quit because they couldn't handle the students. Ron confidently says, "I want to teach this class. Unlike the other teachers, I'm asking for it, and I can start now." The principal agrees and tells Ron to begin teaching on Monday. Before starting, Ron decides to meet with the parents, asking for their cooperation in supporting their children's schoolwork. However, he discovers that many of his students come from heartbreaking family situations. Finally, Monday arrives, Ron's first day teaching the lowest performing class in New York City. As he enters the classroom, he finds chaos. The students are unruly, disrespectful, and uninterested in learning. Some sit on top of their desks, ignoring Ron entirely. One student, Shomika, deliberately drops her book on the floor, earning cheers from her classmates. Despite this, Ron remains patient and asks the students to take their seats as he begins to lay out his classroom rules. Shomika, however, continues to defy him, throwing her book and chatting with her friends. The first day was frustrating for Ron. The class was left in chaos, and even his car was vandalized by an unknown perpetrator. However, Ron didn't retaliate with negativity. Instead, he transformed the classroom into a cleaner and more colorful space. The class Ron taught was indeed very different from the top-performing classes, and Ron was well aware of that. On another day at school, Ron introduced 3 basic rules to his students. He said that in this class, they were a family, they must respect one another, and the 3rd rule was that they had to line up before entering class. These rules sounded ridiculous to the unruly kids, but Ron firmly stated that he would write their names down if they didn't follow the rules. Ron's claim that they were a family was not just empty words. He tried to connect with his students. While chatting with a student named Badria, Ron overheard Julio and his friends gambling under the stairs. It turned out to be a habit among the students in that class to bet on how many days it would take for a teacher to quit. Determined not to lose to these kids, Ron decided to lock the classroom during recess. He wouldn't open the door unless they agreed to line up for lunch. As usual, Shomika refused to follow the rule, but Ron reminded them, "We're a family. If one doesn't line up, then you'll all go hungry." Finally, they exited the classroom, lined up neatly, and followed Ron's rule. But along the way, Ron stopped them and asked Shomika if she had cut the line. Shomika, of course, denied it. "We won't move until Shomika tells the truth," said Ron. "We're a family, and families respect one another." Eventually, Shomika admitted to cutting the line. Ron thought he had managed to get the kids under control, but the next day, when he entered the classroom, it was a mess, like a shipwreck. Hatred was written in large, bold letters on the walls. Once again, Ron didn't give up. He cleaned the classroom again and didn't make a big deal out of it. He reiterated to his students that they must follow the rules. These kids were indeed rebellious. Their behavior seemed to have a mission: to drive any teacher away until they quit on their own. In class, Julio and Tyson got into a fight, and Ron stepped in to break it up. Tyson left the classroom, but Ron quickly followed him and told him to come back. In fact, Tyson had already violated the school rules numerous times. One more violation, and he would be expelled. However, Ron asked the principal to give Tyson one more chance, promising that she wouldn't need to know about this incident. On another day, Ron asked each of his students about the assignment he had given them, but none of them had done it. When Ron asked why, Mike said, "We had more important things to do." Then he turned away from Ron, talked to his friends, and said he didn't care about any punishment. Ron couldn't take it anymore. He turned Shomika's chair around and slammed his hands on the desk. The entire class fell silent. Ron then decided to leave and said, "Okay, you win." The class erupted in celebration, rejoicing in their success at driving away their new teacher. To relieve his stress, Ron took Marissa for a walk around New York City. Marissa encouraged Ron to share what had happened, and Ron finally opened up. Marissa motivated Ron not to give up. "What these New York kids are going through needs to be understood. Maybe you're the good person who can change them," Marissa said. The next day, Ron returned to his class. He realized this was no ordinary class, so he decided to do something unconventional. Ron told his students he would drink chocolate milk every 15 seconds as long as they stayed quiet while he explained things at the front. "If you manage to make me drink all this chocolate milk, maybe you'll see me throw up," Ron said. And so began Ron's teaching while drinking chocolate milk. Indirectly, this strategy got the students to pay attention to what he was explaining. Because of this, they started to open up to Ron. On the playground, Ron even joined them in jumping rope. He became the first teacher they ever invited to play with them. The principal eventually reprimanded Ron for this. She was concerned about the students' grades, but Ron, busy jumping rope, told her that his students would achieve high scores. By May, they'll pass the national exams with high standards, Ron said. The principal was skeptical, but Ron assured her of his abilities and that his students would change gradually. One day, Ron celebrated his birthday with his students in the classroom. He gave them a motivational speech about daring to dream. At the end of the celebration, he invited all his students to step forward and light candles together. One by one, the students came forward and did what their teacher asked. "When this candle is lit, it symbolizes that we unite together and that we can learn more than what you ever dreamed of," said Ron. The class gradually became more united, and day by day, they started taking their studies seriously. When Ron taught in front of the class, he instructed the students to learn the names of all the US presidents in order. a task that seemed difficult as it required memorizing the 42 presidents at that time. At home, Ron got the idea to create a rap song using the presidents' names so that his students could understand better. The next day, he performed the presidential rap song in front of his students to make the lesson more fun. Because of the song, the class scored well in their history lesson about the presidents. They applauded themselves for their achievements. During recess, Ron invited Julio to study math with him after school, as Julio's math scores were very low. After school, Ron also went to look for Tyson, who hadn't come to school that day. Ron brought Tyson's test results and invited him to study math together at a coffee shop. Ron waited for Tyson from noon, but unfortunately, Tyson was late. Tyson arrived at 2 p.m., but as he approached Ron, he saw Julio there. Feeling awkward, Tyson decided to leave. At the coffee shop, Ron played poker with Julio since Julio enjoyed gambling. Through the game, Ron used multiplication and division to subtly teach Julio math. On another day, Ron chased Shomika, who was about to head home, as she had forgotten about her extra study session with him. At the entrance to her house, Ron offered to help Shomika with her homework. Inside the house, as they were about to work on the homework together, a neighbor brought in Shomika's younger siblings. It was Shomika's turn to take care of and babysit her siblings after school. Shomika told Ron she couldn't do her homework because she had to cook dinner. Seeing this, Ron decided to let Shomika do her homework while he cooked dinner for them. That evening, Shomika's mother came home and was shocked to see Ron at her house, cooking for her children. The mother felt insulted, thinking Ron believed she was incapable of taking care of her kids, even though, in truth, that was partially the case. Upset, the mother kicked Ron out. The issue escalated to the school, where the mother reported the incident to the principal. Ron didn't get angry and instead explained that Shomika actually had more potential than anyone else in her class. Unfortunately, Ron said, she's too busy taking care of her siblings. The mother became angry and threatened to stop sending Shomika to school if Ron continued teaching there. Before leaving the office, Shomika begged the principal not to fire Ron just because he was trying to help her. The mother was surprised to see Shomika's reaction. Before the mother left the school, Ron stopped her and said, Shomika has a strong sense of leadership, is creative, and intelligent. If she does well on her exams, she could attend a school in Manhattan. The mother was stunned because the school Ron mentioned was a school for gifted children. Hearing this, the mother softened and promised to arrange for her neighbor to watch Shomika's siblings for longer periods so that Shomika could have time to focus on her homework. The national exams were only 8 weeks away. One morning, Ron distributed his phone number to the students, instructing them to call him if they had difficulty with homework or got into trouble. Ron promised to help them 24/7. After school, he still made time to provide extra lessons to students struggling with certain subjects. Because he pushed himself too hard, Ron eventually fell ill. He was advised to take 2 weeks of complete rest. Of course, he couldn't do that with the national exams just weeks away. Ron forced himself to continue teaching, even while sick. During one lesson about gravity, Ron collapsed and fainted. Ron was left with no choice but to rest. However, he was still worried about his students' preparations for the exams. With Marissa's help, he delivered lessons through a video camera. The principal, who was monitoring the class, was impressed by the changes happening among the students. Days passed, and Ron recovered and returned to school. He was surprised by the scores on the homework he had given and scolded the students for not performing well, even though the national exams were only a week away. Finally, the students expressed their lack of confidence to Ron. It's impossible for us to pass. We're too far behind, and everyone already thinks we're losers, they said. Ron immediately addressed the issue, saying to his students that they had learned many valuable things. All the rules written on the classroom walls are proof of that, and I'm proud of you. Compared to the exam, what you've learned throughout this journey is far more valuable than what's in the textbooks for the national exam. Just do your best, Ron said. The day of the exam arrived. On the way to school, Ron invited Tyson to go together and review some material along the way. Eventually, they all sat for the national exam. Ron was extremely nervous because this exam was not only a test for his students but also a personal benchmark for himself. However, Ron was overjoyed to see his students complete the exam with confidence. The following day, Ron told the students that regardless of the results, he was already proud of them. "You've worked hard over the past few months," he said. To celebrate their effort, Ron invited them and their parents to attend an opera performance. Everyone was thrilled with the plan, including Tyson. Tyson, who had a love for graffiti art, faced trouble at home. His foster parents despised him and considered him a troublemaker. When Tyson painted graffiti on his bedroom wall, his foster father beat him up. Because Tyson didn't show up for the opera performance, Ron decided to visit him at his house. Upon arrival, Ron found the house in a mess, and Tyson wasn't there. Ron searched for him and eventually found him by a dumpster, his face bruised from the beating. To comfort his student, Ron said he had seen Tyson's graffiti artwork and thought it was amazing. Ron then brought Tyson to the principal's office, where arrangements were made for Tyson to stay temporarily. Later, at school, Ron organized an end-of-year party. What made the event special was that Ron presented every student with an award, not just for academic achievement but based on their individual talents. For example, Badria received an award for excellence in science, Julio was recognized for his improvement in mathematics, and Tyson received an award for his artistic talent. Every student was appreciated for their unique skills. When it was time to present the award for Shomika, the principal entered the room with a fax from the education board about the national exam results. "These are not the results I expected from this class," the principal said. To everyone's surprise, the results showed that the class achieved the highest scores in the school, even higher than the advanced classes. The entire class erupted in celebration upon hearing the news. Ron continued with the awards ceremony and read Shomika's award. Initially, he had planned to honor her for being the best in English, but the exam results revealed that Shomika had scored perfect marks in both English and mathematics. Shomika's mother, who was present at the event, was overjoyed and proud of her daughter, whom she had once thought had no future. The students then surprised Ron with an award of their own, naming him the best teacher in New York City. The students from Ron's class went on to attend the best middle and high schools in New York. Ron Clark later wrote a book about the classroom rules he had created, which became a bestseller and was published in 25 countries. He also founded a school called the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta, Georgia, which received a $5 million donation from the famous TV host Oprah Winfrey. Today, Ron Clark continues to inspire education not only in the United States but also in other countries. Ron Clark's dedication to his students' success was truly extraordinary. He instilled in each of his students a sense of self-worth and confidence in their abilities. Through Ron, they learned the power of dreaming big and maintaining a positive mindset. As Ron Clark once said, "If you bring positive energy into a space, negative energy will have no choice but to leave."